So I have the pleasure for this live discussion to have John Mariano. So hi, John.
Hi, Mike. Pleasure. Good to see you.
Same. Really happy to have a chat with you. So instead of doing the traditional, I present the host. I'll let you introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Not at all. And hi, I'm John Mariano. I've been working in the regulatory technology space for about 15 years with analytics, core development, and really supporting a myriad of different companies over the past 15 years. So looking forward to speaking to you all today.
Great, thanks, John. So today, what we're going to be talking about, of course, talking about FinServ industry and refining risk and compliance to drive strategy, capabilities, and performance with no code. So, John, to get things started in our conversation, I know you're a seasoned IT and business leader. You've been able to show outstanding result, in your extensive experience in providing, cost reduction, TCO in different technical and business environments. So maybe you could share with the audience, some advice, some strategic advice on how to leverage, cost effectiveness and managing risk and compliance.
Yeah, sure, Mike. That's a long-winded answer. I'll try to be as succinct as I can be on that. Really, some of the areas of success that we've seen, particularly in fintech, regtech space, is that particularly regulatory space, is the ability to adapt quickly to not just changes with regulators or the regulatory posture that the company may be taking at a particular time, but also internal workflow processes that may also vary depending on reorganization or changes in product mix. So with that, some of the areas of success have been to adapt quickly. Rather than going through a traditional SDLC where you kind of build bespoke applications or extend custom products, what has worked out quite well is the ability to do that again quickly, componentize a lot of those application services, and or expose the ability to modify quickly to business users. And that has been pretty effective. And I'm glad to say that we have practiced some of those in the companies I've worked for, and it's worked out quite well.
No, well, thanks. And of course, the main theme of today's whole agenda journey is no code technology. I'm sure some attendees are familiar with no code, others are not. So, two underlying questions for you. How would you, in your own words, describe low code or no code as an enabler for digital transformation? And why did you choose that technology? And maybe you could share a high level overview of your experience and where you started and where you are today.
Sounds good. So low code and no code, I guess it depends on the way you take it, right? So for low code, that to me means the ability to provide components and or services to really any content provider to allow for the creation of a new solution. And then in the low code, it still need to be some level of review or an enablement by an engineer. No
Mhm.
code is completely no engineer involved, kind of hands off, governance only, software going directly to production that may not go through a traditional SDLC. Um, and where I've seen that be very effective is in the regulated space, particularly on business process reengineering, outlining and key workflow processes where we need to adapt and create new methods to expedite and really decrease the overhead required by a user to move through a regulated process. Like some of these regulated processes, probably a good one's marketing is a good example, where you need to follow like 2210 or 482, those rules from the SEC and FINRA. But you really want that to be a really low touch in terms of impacting marketeers. And the more efficient way to do that is through a means of introducing change that's as least impactful to them, where they're empowered to actually make some of those changes on their own. So it kind of uses a combination of low code, no code tools, potentially, AI, usually utilizing data that you have to actually work that workflow. And the other piece that I kind of liked about the low code, no code approach is with kind of coupling AI and decision making recommendations, not to replace a human, but to make recommendations and adapt that quickly into a workflow. And those approaches change often, and be able to swap them out quickly for improvements is key to success. So it actually, in my experience, it's worked out well. Does it require um, overhead where you're governing what goes in? You just can't turn a blind eye to what's being introduced into production, especially for regulated based tools. Um, but with the appropriate governance processes wrapped around it, it can really be an accelerator. And the other piece, and to share with you all, is that there's definitely a demarcation point where you look at to say, um, there may be tools that you need to expose to different communities that has to be exceedingly polished, where you need a very specific user experience, highly polished, that may require bespoke. But other internal type applications probably don't. And I think being able to find that medium is really another enablement for success. Kind of focuses on the right work versus everything is the same. So hopefully that
Yeah,
answered your question, Mike.
it doesn't, and you're touching also a sensitive point, I think, for any type of organization that has the goal of aligning IT and business, and also traditionally giving more accountability and product development to IT. So how do you shift into empowering business users, or what we can call citizen developers? And how do you find that balance into either enabling those citizen developers versus not necessarily removing the word, but also making understand IT that, you could still have alignment, hence empowering business and maybe giving a little less responsibility, or also empowering IT.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. I think it is really creating that right governance process and exposing what the opportunities are.
Mm.
At least for some of the firms I've been involved with, that was the discussion, to really have a conversation around um, what the value points are, what needs to be exposed, and bringing business and technology leaders together to say, how can we best support business operations? What's the easiest, fastest way to do that that's safe and compliant at the same time? So that governance piece, Mike, I think is a big one, and really right sizing where the approach goes to say, there's areas of either low risk or that can be easily adapted. And then the areas where you increase risk, you grow that over time. And as that grows, your governance process is implemented to be able to review, manage, and deploy some of those software solutions in concert with the technology teams, not just the business running on their own. And I think that happy medium, it takes some time, but
Mm.
it's definitely worth it. It's very much worth the work, especially for the velocity. Definitely seen huge improvements in velocity for especially the simple changes to
Mm.
get through into production.
Yeah, and more specifically for financial industry, how would you encourage them to leverage no code or low code, more specifically in that industry? Because, like you say, we can use technology as an enabler, but maybe I don't know if you have any experience or any journey that where it was either success or failure, but understanding, I think, through your own experience or advisory expertise to encourage, maybe any type of organization, but I could think of, community banks or credit unions. Those
Sure.
do not have maybe the workforce and the power of highly investing into technology, into maybe doing smaller but accurate changes into that path.
Yeah, actually, great question. So I think I'll give you a use case. What I think a great use case, and one that I've experienced, is utilizing low code platform or no code platform to actually portal multiple services and applications together. Where it's a really good value proposition to have a single pane of glass or a portal to execute work items and the same workflow. So by integrating multiple tools or services that you may not want to re-engineer and create either a new application or extend existing ones, you can use the low code, no code type platform to integrate those services together, presenting one pane of glass to the user. And I've seen huge benefits to that. It's just as simple as having a work list deployed to and accessible via one portal rather than using multiple tools. And the productivity increases are substantial. It also provides the opportunity for further downstream automation. And automation can be picked up on as
those work items become standardized, and you can use low code to do that. We did that in one of the companies I worked at. It was really successful. We probably portaled, maybe about 7 different tools together. Use them where you had a single pane of glass for the user. They get in, work their work items, disposition them, close or forward to another person who needs to take action on it, and then record those actions. And again, very, very successful. I think we probably pulled, with no exaggeration, at least 40% of clock time out of those processes just by having it standardized.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's usually, and thanks for sharing that. That was part of some of the next question I had is, how do you measure success, or how do you measure, the benefits? And you give an idea that could be, the time to implement. But are there any other KPIs or just areas when someone wants to go to that route to say, these are things that you can or cannot monitor, but these are ideas or benefits that you will see down the way?
Yeah, I think that's a great point with KPIs, because really the whole enablement is to have your workflow work faster.
Yeah.
One area that, in fact, we utilize Six Sigma and in a project I worked on to look at like incidents per million, and then use that within the workflow to say, okay, pre-engineering, here's how many incidents per million we had, and then we certainly rounded up as needed, but at least gave a baseline metric to show, by not standardizing and having a standard flow, you had a higher degree of error rate. And then the error rate improved as you started to standardize, and being able to rapidly adapt that as well, where people started to understand that there was a standard. It didn't have to vary by user. It was more defined through the standard process that was adopted. You could see error rate improve as well. So I think error rate is one, and then time. Certainly defined service levels can improve, not just from a business delivery perspective, those are important, but the technical one as well, about mean time to close, mean time to repair if they're like a general incident, or just production deployment time of change. That was a huge improvement, just having to not go through a standard SDLC. So I think, Mike, it's all of it. It's hopefully that answers your question, but I think the SLAs are really key and helps articulate why something like this is a good idea.
Yeah, and last question, and how does that impact the customer experience, or the direct end users, the beneficiaries of the banks and the financial organization? Because we can focus about what's going in-house, but how do you think that could be beneficial as well as for the customer journey and the customer experience itself?
Yeah, gosh, there's a lot of answers to that. To be succinct with it is, it's time to market,
Mhm.
and particularly with the CX, you really want to have outstanding customer experience, and
Mhm.
part of that is making your services as simple and effective to use as possible. And simplicity has to do with introducing change, and not just keeping things the same. We all work in a world that changes every day. If we can rapidly introduce change with least friction to the user, making their lives better, that's only an add-on. So I think from the CX side, that's key, and having that be as frictionless as possible to get the solutions out the door.
Great. Well, thank you, John. I wish we had more time to discuss. I'm sure, we'll have the opportunity to connect again. But thanks again. Really insightful. And I hope you stay tuned, for more fruitful conversation as well with other peers in the industry.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mike. Sorry for the tech issue.
No worries. We had it on our side as well. You see, you were telling me our Creatio logo has been reversed. I did try to put it back, but it's still being reversed. So no worries about that. Thanks, John, and
All right.
talk to
Have
you
a
soon.
great day. Take care.
Bye bye.